All right, we are now recording.
Right. Hopefully everybody can see my screen.
Yep.
All right. So one of the things that is probably on a lot of people's mind that I've talked to the last couple of months, because hiring has picked up, as we talked about a little bit earlier, is that, George, I'm getting at particular stages and I'm not progressing. I'm either getting to the face-to-face and past the phone screen, or I'm getting all the way to the final round and I'm not landing the role. So wanted to kind of go over just a couple of slides, and it's actually a part of my book. There's a topic in there, creating the wow at each particular step in the process of interview. So we'll go into it. The phone screen, it shouldn't be something that has to be told, but I've had to actually tell people quite often. They feel that the phone screen is a wing it stage, right? I know a little bit about the company. I looked at it on LinkedIn, but I don't know anything about the person who's going to interview me, especially if you're doing a phone screen or a Zoom call. You're going to get the name of the individual, hopefully, so you can at least get some homework done on the individual the night before. You should always have a little bit of cheat sheets, and probably because if you're doing a Zoom or you're doing a phone screen, you can have it right up in front of you and you can actually start to look at it as you're talking and walking through. But I tell people all the time, it's very important to understand a couple of critical things about homework for the company. Maybe when it was established, maybe if it's a publicly traded company and you're going for a professional position, let's say like an accountant or something like that, you might have looked at the recent 10K, et cetera, just so that you can have a little bit of a dialogue that you did more than, hey, I do know Home Depot and they sell widgets, right? So it's important for you guys to make sure that you do that homework. I always do kind of one page of what's the company, what's briefly the background, its products. Maybe it's got 4 or 5 particular industries it works in, so that you can have at least a 3 or 4 minute conversation that says, hey, I know the company beyond the title of the company. I can't tell you how many times I've actually had to tell people to do this at the phone screen. They always want to try to wing it. And a lot of times they do that process and it doesn't work for them. They want to know that you did something more than just submit a resume. Then when you get in the actual questions, and we've probably talked about this in previous Eagle Group meetings, but how do I answer a question clear and concise? Because I have been on both the receiving end and actually interviewing folks that tend to go on and on and on and go off topic of the actual question itself. So what I have found pretty good to keep on target is use the SAR approach. So when somebody says, tell me a time in which you've been able to reduce overtime. Well, here is my situation. I always start off with the situation, 2 or 3 lines. You want to make sure that you can answer it pretty clear and concise. I always tell people what you're trying to do is give them a taste of the cake, but not tell them the entire recipe of the cake, right? Then you say, here's the actions that I took, either individually as an individual contributor or a manager of people, that you were able to turn around and do these particular tasks and move these people in the right direction and give these people the right support that finally gave you the results. In each one of these responses should be 2 or 3 lines, right? So you're bang, 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 and everybody knows the military is pretty clear and concise. So if you can make it pretty clear like that, you're probably answering the conversation of that question within probably 3 to 4 minutes. You can always ask if they need any elaboration, you want me to go into greater detail as to maybe the actions, but at least it gives you a clear point to stay on. Here was a situation, here's the action that I took, and here were the results that I actually were able to accomplish in that period of time. And then it's pretty clear. What I have found is that when people don't follow this kind of outline or an outline in general, they tend to take anywhere from 7 to 12 minutes. And if you're on a 30-minute phone screen, you're probably only going to answer 1 question and not get called. If you can turn around and answer it this way, you could probably answer questions 4 or 5 questions and get a little bit more depth as your capabilities and your abilities, whatever position. So before I go to the next one, when you're getting ready to get on the phone call, what would you say is probably one of the most important things? other than the two things that we talked about? No comments? I always tell people they should dress up for a phone screen. Why? Because I know when I dressed in my dress blues or my dress greens, I always stood an inch taller and I always spoke with more confidence. And I guarantee you it will come across in the phone screen. Too many times people may be sitting on the couch, they're not sitting with great posture, etc. And it comes across in the confidence and the discussion that you're having with the person, right? So I always tell people, yeah, get a shirt and tie, get dressed up for a phone screen, because it comes across in your phone screen. And then I always say you should end, because they're going to always say here, no, I've got 5 minutes, 3 minutes left. Do you have any questions? You should always have 3 good questions. We'll talk about questions, but no more than 3, no less than 2, because you want to be clear, and it will help you progress as we go through this presentation in preparing for your face-to-face interview. So what 3 questions should we ask? You guys can come up with your own based upon the company and everything, but I have actually found that these are probably the 3 best questions, 2 of which I didn't come up with. I've actually had people ask me these questions in interviews, right? But it basically tells a person, you know, what is your ideal candidate? Because again, they're looking to hire. You want to be the ideal candidate. How can I turn around and make sure that I clarify that either in this particular discussion, or more importantly, when you call me in for a face-to-face to the next level, right? And it's also clarifying how you want to become a part of the team. They're always talking about culture fit, right? So it's always important for you to say, hey, what are some of the best qualities of your high potentials or your next generational leaders, right? So that you can take the notes and make sure that you're following up when you turn around and send that nice follow-up letter that says, hey, I really appreciate the time today and talking about the opportunity at, let's say, Home Depot, right? And I really feel that my experience of changing out toilets and changing out sinks or whatever will make me the best candidate, right? And then also, you want to make sure you're trying to help. Hey, I want to be a team player. How can I hire? You know, you might be being hired as a, let's say, warehouse supervisor, right? How can my job help you? If you're an HR admin, right? Maybe it's because, hey, we've got people that are just not being communicated. Well, I can do that. Here's a situation in which I was able to be highly communicative, got everybody on the same page, and this is how you're helping other teammates, right? So it reinforces not only you're fitting the culture, you're being open to help others, but you're also focused on trying to be the best candidate every time, all the time. So once we've been able to do that, and you send your nice little brief thank you introduction, I appreciate your time today. I am the best candidate because X, Y, and Z of what we spoke about. And here's some examples to reinforce it, so they don't remember. They don't go back and say, George, was he the 12th guy that we interviewed, or was he the 16th guy? Don't know, right? So you want to make sure that you tie into the connection. Bring to the face-to-face. I always love making sure that you create a value proposition based upon those 3 questions, right? We'll talk about an example that I use that's pretty clear and articulate, but I always tell people, first of all, dress for the job. Make sure you can go on all kinds of websites. You can go on Glassdoor and find out what the culture is and everything else prior to. You might even want to ask, hey, you know, just confirming based on the business and the discussion, I saw that maybe you were on a Zoom call and they were basically dressed down. Would it be appropriate for me to wear a suit and tie? I've been in situations where they're like, please don't come with a suit and tie because you'll distract all the workers on the factory floor. I always tell people that a lot of times right now, your first face-to-face might be this, a Zoom call, a Teams meeting, etc. You want to make sure that you do all the technical tests the night before, call a friend, whatever the case may be, schedule a meeting or whatever, and maybe it's Google Meets, whatever, but make sure that your audio and your visual works so that, and you also log in probably 10, 15 minutes earlier, just so that you've confirmed and you're not rushing around the last 5 minutes or you're late for your Zoom call. The other thing is making sure that your background is aesthetically inviting, right? It's not too condensed with material. It's not a distraction. You don't have files like over here in this corner right here falling over, where people will turn around and lead to making sure, well, this guy's probably really not clean. He's not organized, right? You want to distract, you remove that. I've had people have actually had 80s posters that date them when they also had curtains that look like the ones my grandmother had, right? You want to make sure that if you can't find that area where you're normally having your meetings, maybe you just find a corner of the home where it's a very blank background to have your meeting. And then make sure that you leave them with your value proposition. So these are back to the 3 or 4 questions that you were able to not only take out of the phone screen, but also in your first face-to-face. Maybe it's reassuring based on those questions of those 2 or 3 people that you've had in the face-to-face, maybe a part of the team that you're going to be a part of. It may be peers if you're in a supervisor or manager position that you're going for, but you want to make sure that you align your value proposition where they said, here are the 4 or 5 critical things that are important for this role. And what are they? This is an example. So you basically put the 3 or 4 things on the left-hand side for this example. The competencies that they were looking for was somebody in supply chain, somebody who had an executive presence, was able to hire and select top talent, and also build a culture of inclusion, right? So then I basically took an Excel spreadsheet and put the experience, so it reinforces what they're asking for and what they're looking for. And it also identifies some accomplishments. So this is in addition to your resume. I always tell people that when you are interviewing and you're getting to the face-to-face, the second final round, or maybe the final round, the resume stack over here on the left kind of dwindles right down to the bottom 3 or 4 candidates that we're going to select from. What people don't realize is there's an invisible stack over here on the right that you have to fill up each particular time you have an opportunity to get in front of your people, the company that you're interviewing for. So I always tell people, you want to leave them with a value proposition, you want to follow up, you want to make sure that you've done your homework, and you're basically reinforcing any other concerns that they may have, that you are the ideal candidate for any position. Then we get to the final round, right? And I've had a lot of people say, I've been the bridesmaid, but not the bride. Meaning I've gone to final rounds 3 or 4 times and I'm just not getting selected. Obviously, you've got the background. Obviously, you've got the skill. It really comes down to, can this person, and I can see it where people have said before, can I have lunch with this person and not really, get upset, or, those are the types of things. I mean, I even had a situation where somebody said, I like that guy because he wore a red tie today, and the other guy wore a blue tie, and I don't like blue ties. Ironically enough, sometimes that's what it is. But I tell people, I always tell them to do a 90-day plan. This is based on your discussions, and this is based on your final round of your hiring manager, as well as your peers. You've got enough information to say, I've taken time and I've taken some insight of all the input of everybody I've talked to, and I've outlined a 90-day plan. So in this example, in my first 30 days, I expect that I'll come in and I'll make sure that I am a very good team player, and I'll connect. I'll align with the culture, I'll align with whatever particular processes that I'm looking for, and also try to understand the performance metrics, right? If you're in a manager's, go ahead. Is there a question? So if you're in a manager position, you might be asked to come in and evaluate, hey, you know what? Our metrics aren't going in the right direction. So for example, our on-time delivery has really been struggling for the last 3 or 4 months. Well, you know as well as I do, on-time delivery is more of a tail wag the dog metric. There's a lot of things above in the front end process that could manage the metric a lot better to enable you to get a higher on-time delivery. So for example, Our industry, we manufacture capital equipment. So if you don't start a tool on time with the lead time and the material lead time and everything else, high chances are you're not going to actually finish that tool on time. Hence, you're not going to ship it on time. So one of the things that we changed in our metrics in the first 30 days I came on board is that we started measuring tool launches. How often are we going to launch a tool on time? Because if we have a high percentage of launch on time, we've got an even higher percentage of shipping it on time, as an example, right? And then your next 60 days, you're going to absorb. You're going to take your military ability to turn around, absorb the team's leadership, understand the morale, adjust, support those particular people. There might be people on the organization that you might be able to help cross-functionally as your peers. You're going to turn around and highlight that in your 90-day plan. In your 60 days, this is what part of your process. And you're communicating with your potential hiring manager your 90-day plan. Here's how I would go about it. And I can tell you, when I took over here in Rudolph, now we're on 2 when we rebranded and we merged last year, my CEO was pushing me. He's like, George, you've been here 30 days. When are you going to do this, this, and this? I said, you have to understand the culture, Mike. I said, you should know better than I do. If I come in here basically barking orders and changing all kinds of things, people are going to say, wait a minute. You don't even know us. You don't even know the process, but you're going to make changes, right? So sometimes part of that process is also managing up. But you get clear alignment in your 90-day plan with your hiring manager. And that's what you're going to sit down and tell them. You know, this is just an outline. This is based upon the input that I took of the company and our discussions. And we can definitely solidify this 90-day plan the first week that I'm on board. What do you say? So yes, you are selling yourself. You're always selling yourself when you're looking for a job or in transition. And this is a particular process in which you want to be able to hit the final round and become the person that they select and not the person that gives a call and says, really appreciate your time. We decided to go in a different direction. And I've used this 90-day plan process in my last 5 jobs. And the last 2 jobs are different industries altogether. I had no experience, and I was going up against people who were either in the industry, in the company for 10 years plus, or a customer in the industry. And I was able to beat out those people both times because this is my approach and how I went about it. So how do you win? You look forward to discussing asking for the job. When you leave your final round, I can tell you how many people who do not close the deal, how many people are in sales out there, they don't close the deal. You have to ask for the job. And that's what I asked when my last role here with Rudolph and the previous roles that I always ask. I asked at the end of the day before I left, thank you for your time. When would you make the selection? And I'm looking forward to being a part of the team. I want the job. I can't tell you how many people that I've interviewed that don't even ask for the job. And I'm like, well, you know, obviously they're going through the motion. They're really not excited about this job. They really don't want it.